What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Reading the Room. This is where we go around different types of wide receiver rooms, running back rooms, quarterback rooms, and we talk about what their potential battles are, what their full depth chart breakdown is, and just kind of go through each player. And we have a lot of fun with these. These have been fun all off season, so go check out the others. Today, we are going LSU wide receivers. So we're going to look at the LSU Tigers, what their wide receiver room looks like, what Brian Kelly's got cooking down there in the Bayou. So let's take a look at that after the intro. All right, let's get into LSU. Got to put our guy Malik Nabers up here. One of the best wide receivers coming back to college football. If, he's going to challenge in that class. Now, let's talk about what that offense looked like last year. So 10-4 overall. Really, beat Alabama, 2-point conversion there at the end. They had that chance. They obviously played for an SEC title against Georgia. And then they just destroyed Purdue in the Citrus Bowl. So 10-4, which, really is realistically, they had a pretty good year based on what Brian Kelly was, brought in to do. You have to like that. Scoring offense, 24th, 34.5 points per game. Total offense was 28th, 453 yards per game. And then you see that plays per game, passing attempts, everything was pretty solid. So when we think of like LSU last year, you're just thinking a very consistent offense at times, but at times I'd say they would struggle finding identity early, right? Against that Florida State game, that comes to mind. But overall, you have to like the numbers, right? So when we get into the numbers, the actual numbers here in the next slide here, I think the biggest thing is LSU. I think they performed what they needed to do, right? That Texas A&M loss was bad. That was one they wish they probably could get back. The Tennessee blowout was bad, but overall, if they would have beat Texas A&M and then were able to pull out Florida State with that blocked extra point, you're talking about a potential playoff team if they only had lost to Georgia. So again, right there in terms of that area, and then with Tennessee, there's there. Now, let's get into what that offense looked like last year. So Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, there's some things that stood out about their offense. So first one is first down success. So when you're looking at what their first down success was, you have to like what they did. LSU's offense ran 997 plays in 2022. Only 201 of those came on third or fourth down. So what we saw last year is we just saw an elite. They were 8th in first down, PPA and EPA. So essentially their success rate on first down was a top 10 unit, right? That is really good. So when you think of like what they were able to do, the only offenses who ran late down players at a lower clip. So in terms of like, they had to actually run a lot of plays on third and fourth were, Georgia, USC, Alabama, Syracuse, right? They were top 10 offense last year in terms of first down success. They were very, very successful early downs, which really puts you in, strength of numbers there. But on top of that, on second and third down, they were 30th and 42nd, which isn't crazy. Isn't crazy good, but it is efficient, right? At times. And then you see the conversion rate. So their conversion rate was even better. So when you're looking at that, LSU was one of just 7 FBS teams to rank in the top 10 avoiding late downs, but also top 15 when it came to converting them. So they converted at a very high rate. Part of that is those early, the short yardage situations on those third and fourth downs, and with Jaden Daniels and his, his ability to kind of make things happen with his legs that you saw last year. And that's where the other part we're going to talk about in this offense. Quarterback development was a big thing. Jaden Daniels looked very, very good last year. 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, turned it on down the stretch. He had over 1,000 yards rushing, which helps with that first down and conversion rate there. But they've done a good job. So one thing they look forward to in this LSU offense, quarterback development, high, conversion rate, first down success, all the things that you need to do to be successful. They also have, Garrett Nussmeier, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, even though he's not going to start. I think Garrett is up there in that echelon. So you have to like that about that offense. But let's go in that wide receiver room. So first guy up is Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers is a legitimate wide receiver one. And when we talk about him last year, 72 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Really, really elevated his play. Was the best LSU wide receiver. Kayshon Boutte was not in terms of what that was. He was open a lot more. We're hoping that Jaden Daniels stops overthrowing him. And in reality, we got to see that. We have to hope that he can kind of convert those touchdowns a little bit more, but he is pushing for that 24 wide receiver class in terms of being a top 3 guy in the class. Absolutely right there behind, when we're thinking of like Xavier Worthy, Emeka Egbuka, obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be at the top, but Malik's right there with them. Now, what does he do well? What do we like about him? First, he's athletic as hell. So when you're looking at his overall profile, you have to love his athleticism. His tape is filled with it, right? He's got that tough streak. He's just another in line with LSU wide receivers. We're thinking Jamar Chase, we're thinking Justin Jefferson, even Terrace Marshall had it. Just that toughness, that athleticism that you absolutely love to see. And what Kayshawn had before the injury and the unfortunate year that he had last year, Malik is just next in line, right? Good catch radius, can go up and get it, contorts his body really well on the sideline. Like, this kid's got those things, and he has NFL pedigree already. You just have to like what he can do. Those skills translate to the NFL. Now, weaknesses are areas of improvement. Consistent separation, I think it's highlighted on his tape, on scouts and film. But I think that it'll come, right? I don't think that's something that's going to be a weakness for a long time. He does have that consistent separation issue at times, but overall, I think he's going to get there. Press coverage, I think it's one of those things, like, we have him slotted in our manifesto as a slot guy. I think he can be versatile and play on the outside, but he's definitely got to get off the line a little bit better. I think he got jammed a little bit sometimes last year. You saw it on the tape. But overall, I don't think it's a knock. I just think, hey, if you can kind of improve that strength, get off the line, get out of that quickness, and in vertical speed, what is he in terms of, like, can he take the top off of defenses, right? So if he's going to just be a slot guy and he's going to kind of consistently do that, that's okay. I don't necessarily think he needs that vertical speed, but can he take that next step, right? When we talk about areas of improvement, we're talking about college kids here that are going to improve. So, these are not knocks. These are just areas that you probably want to see his profile get a little bit better. Now, after Malik, we have Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr., as you can see, came in as a wide receiver 9 of his class. So he was very sought after. Overall, big kid, right? So when we're looking at just this room, they like their big wide receivers, but 6'4", 201, probably playing in that Z area, right? That's where we have him instead of the manifesto that we write. 4-star kid, he's been consistent, 300 yards, the touchdowns have been there. But obviously he hasn't, like, really broken out, right? So could this be his breakout year? I think the thing when you're looking at the wide receiver room as a whole, what are their builds, right? So when we see Brian Thomas Jr., he's the only one sitting there besides Shelton Sampson as that big guy, 6'4", maybe that red zone type of build, right? Malik kind of gives you that playmaker in the slot, right? So these two guys there, and then we'll get into who the X is probably going to be. But the thing with Brian, and the thing that you have to note, size is going to be there. Red zone, ability to kind of go up and get it. Maybe be that guy, that outlet guy. Well, you saw a lot of like plays last year when you're breaking down when I was scouting for this video. A lot of like 5-yard outs, get it to him. Like 10-yard outs, get it to him. Maybe they elevate that, right? Maybe they look for him a little bit more. Good toughness as well. Like, I like his toughness. These LSU guys, they're dogs. They can play, and they play hard. Good yak as well. I thought he did a good job in the open field. He's a big guy. He's a laboring guy, but he's got some agility. He's got some nimbleness there in the open field. He can definitely do that. Areas of improvement, I mean, he's got to improve that production, right? If we're talking about him being like an NFL capital type guy, can he get over 600, 700 yards? I feel like 600 to 700 is a good number for him. So if he hits that production metric, I don't see him coming out this year, as far as the NFL goes, unless he has a really big year. But he could be that, solid veteran presence next year for the Tigers as well. Speed and drops. Like, I think those big things, I don't know and necessarily think he's going to have that speed ever in terms of top elite speed, but he definitely does have to improve on the drops. They highlighted some of the things about his drop, in terms of coming back to the routes. Now, whether that's because Jaden Daniels was a little less accurate, whereas, he couldn't go up and get those things, I think that's up to interpretation, but we'd like to see his hands improve just a little bit. Next guy is Kyren Lacy, and to me, Lacy is just that glue guy. So we've talked about glue guys on these reading the rooms for a long time. Jordan Whittington from Texas. There's glue guys out there in college football. Kyren's a glue guy. So for me, he's probably going to start at that X, 6'2", 212. 4-star kid coming out of high school, and he's just that glue. I think that he's kind of that tough guy when you're looking at what he does well. Good release, comes off the ball really well, and they're going to learn from each other here. I'd love for Malik to learn from Lacy a little bit, take that veteran leadership. I think that's another thing you could have put on his strengths here for Lacy. Just a veteran guy, good release, contested catch. This dude goes up and gets 50-50 balls, right? So, like, that's what I think really excites me about these three starters, presumed starters, right? So we're thinking Lacy can be that X, goes up in 50-50, gets off the ball quick, maybe creates separation fast. Brian Thomas Jr., red zone guy, kind of that outlet. And then Malik Nabers is that dude, right? We're talking about Malik being that game breaker, game changing player. They complement each other really well. And Lacy does have speed. So Lacy can kind of be that speed guy when they need it. Areas of improvement, again, want to see that production, right? So the two things kind of go hand in hand. Production needs to earn targets. So how many targets are going to go around here, especially with Daniels at quarterback? Can Daniels kind of elevate these guys? How much can he elevate them, right? We've been thinking of like, hey, he had 390 attempts last year. He did rush the ball for 80 times. So where is that production going to come from? That's something to note. And in route running, I think one thing he can improve on is that route running being, more nuanced route runner. I don't think they're going to ask him to run a lot of routes, and I don't think they're going to ask him to run a lot of complicated routes, but can he consistently get in and out of breaks and be a better route runner? Next guy I want to talk about is a guy that I absolutely love. Now, in terms of what he is as a player, I think that this was the best get for LSU this offseason. Aaron Anderson, a transfer from Alabama. I absolutely love Aaron Anderson. Remember, he came out of the state of Louisiana, wide receiver 5, didn't do much, right? Got injured and just never really came out of there. And I will tell you this, Nick Saban is upset he lost this kid based on what he was expecting from him. I know they love this kid. Now, here's what I like about Aaron Anderson. He is the only one that really profiles in a way in this depth chart that only wide receiver that profiles, his strengths. He's a playmaker. This kid, you get the ball in his hands, he's going to be there. He's going to be a special teams guy. They've already talked about that because of the way the LSU's kind of special teams didn't really elevate themselves last year. He's going to be out there, kick returner, punt returner. This dude's going to serve at all those roles. He's going to be a media impact player. And I'm going to tell you this right now. If Aaron Anderson can be a top 5 wide receiver like he was in high school and give this offense that extra, dimension, that other guy, this offense is going to be special, right? I'm not just saying that. Like, I'm not even an LSU fan. I'm just saying this offense can be special. He can elevate that because he's got the speed. He's got that area there. And in long term, this guy could be your guy, when we're talking about next year, right? So those are the areas you really like about his strengths and what he does. As far as, areas of improvement, he doesn't have a ton of experience, didn't play last year, obviously got injured, needs to earn targets again. So needs to earn targets again. And your route running, he's a pure speed guy. And I think there's some nuance with that lack of experience that has happened. He doesn't have that route running yet. But I do think that he's the type of guy you get on a screen pass and you just go, right? And you get him, if you scheme him the right way to get open, he doesn't need a ton of targets. He needs to earn them. He needs to get on the field. That's what that means. But if he gets 3 targets, that could be enough. He go 3 for 120 and 3 touchdowns, right? This is the type of kid. He's a game breaker. I absolutely love Aaron Anderson. Now, to wrap up the other guys in this room, Chris Hilton Jr., I think is a solid prospect. I like Chris Hilton Jr. Remember, he came in as wide receiver 5. So we're thinking of like guys in this area and what they are. Like Chris Hilton Jr. is another guy that you have to like, 6 foot, 180, 185, 183, kind of in that range. I like him. Again, very, 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 very stacked room. Next guy, Landon Ibieta, I think is how you say it. Ibieta. Please don't yell at me, LSU fans. He's an interesting one because he's more of like, he profiles in a lot of different ways. So you're looking at, 3-star kid, really kind of just that guy. He's probably the X in between Lacy and Brown, Jalen Brown, who I'll mention in a minute. But could be that guy that just gets targets. Maybe that reliable guy, young kid, right in that range. Didn't play last year. That's why I didn't have any stats. Next, guys, I want to kind of go through is the recruits. So LSU did a good job of targeting the recruits. You want to throw in Aaron Anderson in this one because he's a transfer, but really, he didn't play last year. So when you're looking at what these guys are, Jalen Brown comes in at wide receiver 14. Shelton Sampson Jr. is a guy that I've highlighted on this channel before. We've talked about him when we were going through our areas there. Wide receiver 21, 4-star kid. And again, they did a good job of getting guys that they want and they profiles the way they want. So, he's 6'4", 181. When you're thinking about Brian Thomas, realistically, he's that next guy, right? Him and Hilton and those guys in there. So there's that. I think Kyle Parker is actually kind of underrated as a recruit. So when we're thinking of what he is, wide receiver 53, 4-star kid, you have to really like that. And then Kai Preen is another one that you have to love. And you have to understand that, Kai Preen is an athlete, but it looks like he's going to be playing wide receiver. So that's a good room. That's a good setup for them and what they were able to accomplish there. And I thought, overall, just thinking about this wide receiver class overall in this room, it is one of the most talented wide receiver rooms in the SEC, right? Top to bottom, they have guys, they filled needs. And if they hit their ceilings, this could be a special, special offense. Now, when we're looking overall at their other positions, like we like to do, just very basic, we are going to be doing a giant breakdown of LSU. So sub to the channel so you see that. But overall, you have to like the quarterback situation. Jaden Daniels is one of the most veteran presence quarterbacks in college football. Garrett Nussmeier, like I talked about earlier, this kid's a dude. I think next year, I think realistically, Garrett's going to be an NFL draft prospect. He is very, very solid. So if anything was to happen to Daniels, I don't think they take a step back. And to be quite honest, I think they could take a step forward with this passing offense. Running back room is very, very stacked in terms of guys in that room. Noah Cain, Diggs, Armani Goodwin, Williams, Jackson. Caleb Jackson's a guy that I really like. John Emery Jr., Trey Hawley. There's a lot of good dudes in this room. 3-4 guys can they're just going to be able to churn those dudes out. Tight end room, Mason Taylor, I think is going to be they really like this kid. Mac Markway, Kamarion Pimpton, some of these other guys out there. But Mason Taylor, they've talked about having that pedigree, elevating. They really, really like this offense. And like I said, this is the best LSU offense we've seen in a long time, since probably, Joe Burrow's time. But in terms of overall, this, you have to like what they have. I thought they maybe, came on a little early last year in terms of what their potential could be. Maybe they overperformed last year. I think this year they're going to challenge right back into it. I think they have a massive game against Florida State. If they can win that game early on, especially with all the buzz Florida State's getting, they could put themselves in the driver's seat to go get that, go to the playoff when you're thinking of what they have, after that. Or Auburn, no, Alabama, Florida, right? Texas A&M, you're going to be in there. But those are the areas to look at. Now, as far as who we think is going to be the dude, this isn't, something to, stress about. Malik Nabers, I think, is going to be the guy. Malik Nabers has a chance to put himself in that wide receiver 3/2 conversation, round 1 draft pick. He's got to stay, he had some trouble off the field a little bit this offseason, but all accounts, it seems like he's okay. I think NFL teams are going to be a little worried about, Kayshon Boutte falling, all of that. But if Malik can keep his head on straight off the field, I don't think there's anything that can stop him on the field to becoming that wide receiver 3 of the class. So appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Sub to the channel. Let us know how you're doing. We're getting a ton of love on our channel for all the college football videos that we've been pushing out, and we thank you for that. Go check out our Patreon. Check out the description below. We'll be back next time on another Reading the Room. Appreciate you guys.